Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Today is January 29th, 2026. We're starting off here today with our autonomous vehicle briefing, and we have some special guests here with us. Christy Nizer, the Administrator of the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration. We have First Sergeant Brett Canfield, who's the Assistant Commander of the Maryland State Police. Anthony Perez, Northeast Policy Manager for Waymo. And Ariel Wolf, who's the General Counsel for the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association and a partner at Venable. We're really looking forward to this briefing. I think it's going to be extremely interesting. The only thing that's lacking is an actual autonomous vehicle for us to scoot around in, but maybe we can arrange that later. Just before we start off, I want to thank everyone for your time and your energy that you put into this. I think it's going to be tremendously beneficial to the committee as we move forward and consider various pieces of legislation that will affect this area of the law in your industry. So without a further delay, Administrator Nizer, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Good. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. It is certainly our pleasure to be in front of you talking about this exciting issue. As you know, our focus in Maryland at the Department of Transportation is always about saving lives. That is always front and center in terms of what we're doing. And so it's exciting to talk about technology that really is focused just on that. So as you can see, we do have a vision for what we want in terms of connected and automated vehicles in Maryland, and safety is right at the heart of it. Not only creating a safe system, but being equitable, convenient, and connected from a multimodal standpoint. Economic development is certainly another important principle as we talk about our vision for CAV in Maryland. Not only the life-saving benefits, but also the economic benefits. And we'll give some examples of some of the companies that are operating in this space and really providing a benefit for our residents. And finally, really embracing innovation. The reality is, as we look at how we've reduced fatalities across this country, innovation has been a part of that, whether it is automatic braking or electronic stability control. Really, technology has enabled us to save lives and make sure that we are truly as safe as possible as we move forward. So my overarching message is really that this is not a new conversation. In fact, in December of 2025, over 10 years ago now, we started our Connected and Automated Vehicle Working Group in Maryland. And the goal of that group was really to be collaborative, to talk about these issues that we knew were going to be important from a policy, from ultimately a legislative standpoint, to bring people together and to truly be collaborative. So as you can see, we've been bringing people together for over 10 years to start having these conversations. And it's something that, frankly, Maryland is known for throughout the country, the collaboration that we have at these meetings. In fact, we have many attendees from other states surrounding us because they see the benefit in the dialogue that we're having. In the first few years, really, it was about building the foundation, getting the right stakeholders at the table, not only at the state, but the local level, making sure the right people were there, looking at our benefits that we have in Maryland in terms of our location. We not only have our great university system, which bring a lot to the table as we talk about some of these issues, but really our technology sector. A lot of benefits that come from us in the state of Maryland. And so over those first years, we developed a process of what does it look like if you want to work with Maryland. And we developed a permit process in conjunction with some of the early adopters in this space. To be able to express that you want to work with the state of Maryland in a pilot status, and then ultimately that you want a permit to be able to operate on the roads in a testing manner. And so that was created back in 2017 as a way to really experiment and to see what's out there in a safe way. Again, always keeping safety at that top priority. And so I'll talk a little bit more about some of those initial entities that worked with us. Moving on, we developed a CAV strategic plan and framework. We also did a scan in terms of legal review of things that might need to be addressed in the coming year. We've been working with our national partners trying to really look at best practices. As you know, some states are in different spaces when it comes to this, maybe focusing on a particular sector of transportation. So we've really been trying to learn from them and not reinvent the wheel as it comes to this. We've also done some work with technology in terms of, the features that are already in your car that can make a difference today. Whether that's lane assist, whether that's your blind spot indicator, all these things are really important. So If you have a loved one going through driver ed, they will learn about that as part of their driver ed. We've done some education with our driver ed instructors to make sure that they have good information, because our newer drivers are going to see more and more of this technology as they move forward. So really that's the foundation. It's also in our driver's manual now in terms of some of these features, so there's an awareness. We also focus a lot on education, and I will say every CAV meeting, and I know some of you, either your staff or maybe you've been able to attend some meetings. We're really pleased to have Senator Love help sponsor our last one, which was right here in Annapolis, where we had a demonstration by Waymo, who'll be speaking later, but really at every CAV working group meeting, we have a demonstration. And there's a good reason for that. We want people to be able to touch and feel the technology. And as policymakers, it's important for us to really understand what it looks like in real life before we can, try to form what that policy should look like going forward. So that's really important to the CAV effort and the work that we do. We've also been really looking at workforce development. It's an important component of it as we move forward. If you think about the way in which we maintain our vehicles, it shifts in a CAV environment, so we want to make sure we're bringing our workforce along with us and having those conversations up front. As we moved on, you can see there's other great efforts that has happened in terms of our airport, as we look at smart technology and parking, and how we can better serve our customers. And really, we are recognized, as I said, as that regional leader with real-time deployments and a strong foundation for innovation. So again, as we talk about that CAV working group, our members include law enforcement and emergency responders, traffic safety professionals, planners, engineers, economic development, regional organizations, state and local governments, policymakers, trucking and freight industry, as well as education and research partners. It really is this diversity of opinions and perspectives that we think is important in terms of shaping our policy going forward. And you can see our various focus areas, which I kind of referenced before. We want to make sure we're looking at that public education and outreach. Public has concerns. If they haven't interacted with it, they might be excited about it, but they might also have some fears. And we want to make sure we're leaning in that space, planning and policy, early deployment testing, infrastructure, and workforce. And so in addition to the larger group meeting, and if you were at the meeting recently, you know that we have over 100 attendees. This is an area that people are really interested in what's going on. They want to learn more about it. But we also have these subgroups that do the real important work in between our larger group meetings. So you can see some of those from a technical perspective, looking at the IT issues, looking at issues related to engineering, the policy subgroup, again, looking at the framework in which this exists, the freight subgroup, obviously very important as we think about that sector of our economy. Maryland Motor Truck is a very active participant in that. We think of our port and, transporting freight throughout the state. And then just as importantly, our emergency responder subgroup, right? So we want to make sure, whether it's our law enforcement, whether it's our firefighters, whether it's those folks from EMS who are going to be at the scene, do they understand how to interact with the technology? What's our responsibility to them to make sure they're prepared? I know at these meetings we hear time and time again, hybrids came out as a great technology. Unfortunately, law enforcement didn't know how to interact with it. So if you deploy the technology without bringing law enforcement to the table, it can have dangerous consequences. And obviously, we don't want anybody to be injured throughout that process. So this gives you a little bit of a sense in terms of some of the vehicles that we've had deployed in Maryland. You can see lots of shuttle examples. That last mile solution has been a really popular deployment. But you think about, for an employer is one example that we had in Clarksburg, Maryland. And so it's all about transporting some of their employees from one location to another. You can see Steer Technology on the right is a woman-owned business in Howard County. It's a great example of how Ingenuity was funded as an incubator grant by Howard County, and now they are providing their technology worldwide, heavily used by the military, but a lot of commercial applications as well. And so the benefit that can come there. You see the personal delivery devices there in the center. That's on several college campuses throughout the state of Maryland. I know that's an issue that the legislature talked about previously. So lots of different types of implementations when it comes to connected and automated vehicles. And I think that's important, just in understanding that, it's just not one solution that we're talking about here. It is a much broader compilation. And so just to give you a sense, I mentioned the first step in the process, if somebody is interested in partnering with us, is the expression of interest. We've had 52. Some of them are research organizations. Some of them are private sector businesses who are interested in partnering with us. You know, that might mean sharing information. That mean looking at research and trying to figure out how to work together. Or it might mean a permit. So the next step in the process is to apply for this highly automated vehicle permit. There are multiple steps that the organization provides us information about exactly what they want to do, because again, these are different solutions, and so every permit is going to be slightly different. They're going to tell us about their experience already. Have they operated in other states? Where have they been testing? There's certain insurance requirements. There's requirements that they have operators in the vehicle. And so all this information is submitted, and then we have a dialogue with the company in terms of what is their intention. Is it limited to a geographic area, to a roadway? How does that intersect with the locals? We involve the locals in the conversation if there is that impact, so they are completely part of the process. And I think one of the examples, I mentioned the shuttle, Local Motors, if anybody was at National Harbor a few years ago, that was a shuttle that was operating within National Harbors, initially in a testing phase with one of these highly automated vehicle permits. But eventually, after proving that it was safe and that they were a good actor, we were able to allow them to actually allow individuals to ride in the shuttle device. So really exciting. With that highly automated vehicle permit, there is a number, and that information is visible to law enforcement, again, about that connection. So like your tag would be visible to law enforcement, they also know that it has been approved throughout this process. That is one of the national recommendations, that law enforcement has that information. Again, I talked about those personal delivery devices, kind of fun to get your lunch delivered right to you with one of those cute little robots. Truck platooning, I know that's an issue that this legislature considered a few years ago. We have not had any applications. The conversation has kind of moved in a different direction as it comes to the larger vehicles. And then we've created this map, which basically says if you're interested in doing some testing, we have places, some of them, frankly, MVA, some of them state highway, MVA, places, or MTA places where we have land, and you could test different environments throughout the state. Because again, we want to be open for folks to come in and be able to test out the technology. You recognize America in miniature. It's a perfect way from the mountains to the shore to be able to test varied technology and try to encourage the use within the state of Maryland. And so our friends on the panel are going to talk about this a little bit more, but I do think it's important to mention that there is a context here, that there are other states who are actively testing. I will point out that we don't have legislation passed in Maryland, so in most states, even though I referenced all the activity that we have going on, you won't see us highlighted, and that's because despite our administrative efforts, when these kind of scans are done, we don't have legislation doing it. But important to point out that there is a lot of activity going on throughout the country, and certainly close to Maryland. I mentioned that some of our surrounding jurisdictions come to our CAV working group meetings. DC was our last meeting that we just had in December, talking about their plans for AVs, and we know that Waymo, who we'll hear from later, made an announcement there. Zox made an announcement there as well. There's a lot going on. They have different dynamics in DC, so they're trying to make sure that it's deployed in a thoughtful way. But we are sharing all information with them as they move forward from their regulatory process, so that we are in line with what's happening. Obviously, that probably leads to the question then what's happening in Maryland. We know Waymo has announced, and we know that they're out there mapping, just to be clear, and I know they'll reference this, but I just want to, again, from the state perspective, assure you that's what's happening, mapping with individuals in the vehicle today to get a better sense of the terrain in the Baltimore area, so they'll be ready to move forward. So in conclusion, I just want to say that, we have a lot of work been done in this area. We've got a great team that represents folks from throughout the agencies, from Maryland Insurance Administration, the State Police, the Transportation Authority Police, ranging from the Department of Disabilities, who are really, excited about what this technology can do for people that don't have transportation or can't have transportation due to various challenges, as well as great partners at the local level. We've got local jurisdictions attending our meetings all the time, and then the private sector, of course, which you'll hear from later. So we're excited about the next phase as we move forward and see what the legislature would like to do in terms of full deployment in Maryland, but you're always welcome. Your staff's always welcome at our meetings. We've got one coming up in April after session. So we do want policymakers to be a part of the process. So hopefully you've seen, we send out invites to our meetings. We want it to be as inclusive as possible. So again, we wind up with the best possible policy moving forward. So with that, I know we've got a great panel of folks who are going to talk about their perspective on this issue, but there is a website that has a lot of information. Every working group meeting we have, all the information is out there publicly, so you can find the presentations and information that's been provided to the group. With that, I will conclude my presentation and turn it over to the next presenter.
Yes, actually, because it's not, the same panel and different people are going to speak to different aspects of this, I'd like to, if we could just take questions after each panelist goes. So we, yeah, so yes, absolutely. If the members have questions that are directly on point with the administrator. So with Senator James and then Senator West.
Thank you so much. Sorry to be a couple minutes late. And so just quickly, a couple of questions. When you mentioned insurance, in terms of these companies, I assume you're talking about making sure they have enough liability insurance and assets and things like that. So you're putting them sort of through that kind of screen, if you would. Right?
That's right. As part of that highly automated vehicle permit process, they have to demonstrate to us that they have insurance to cover.
And then on the chart that, I don't know, collaboration with industry, you have different categories: highly automated vehicles, personal delivery. So is the personal delivery companies not in a testing mode, but in a we're just using it mode? In other words, they're not testing. We actually have two companies operating autonomous vehicles in Maryland and providing deliveries, but just limited to the Maryland campuses.
That's right. They're operating on campuses. At Morgan State, I believe there is one local road that they're crossing over, but they've gotten approval from the Baltimore City
So does the public get to know this so that, I probably wouldn't be too surprised, but if I were driving along and saw a vehicle without a driver, I might be a little surprised at first. Is there some way you let the community know that
that's a great question.
They are in your community? Don't think car's just going off by itself or something.
Yeah, there's multiple mechanisms we do with that. So when we've had testing in certain areas, we've reached out and let law enforcement know. So we send out law enforcement bulletins to let them know what's going on specifically with the testing and let them know where they can find that permit number as part of the system. And then in terms of community outreach, I know that was something that was done extensively when that last mile solution was done in Montgomery County. So generally we work with the local governments in those areas to try to ensure that the general public in those communities has outreach. I will say the companies themselves generally do it. Most of it up to this point has kind of been geographically limited, like National Harbor and that Montgomery County example. And so it's easy to kind of make sure that individuals in that vicinity get the message.
And then in terms of companies that are asking and getting permission to test in the state of Maryland, is that, I guess what I'm going to ask you is eventually, I guess people like me could purchase an autonomous vehicle, right, at some point. Is the testing of the companies that are coming now and getting tested, and permitted, would an individual like me be limited to those companies that have gone through that process? Is this sort of like these companies getting in early means that they're probably going to have sort of a leg up over other companies that might sell these kind of vehicles, but maybe didn't go through some testing process in Maryland?
I think it's a great question because there are a lot of vehicles out there with what they call self-driving technology. That really is not intended to be without human intervention. So you as the owner of that vehicle, there are several obviously name brands that are out there selling vehicles with a self-driving technology. In some ways that's a misnomer, right? You are supposed to still be engaged with the vehicle, which is why we've seen some crashes happen, frankly, when folks were not engaged with the vehicle. I think that, and we've talked about this a lot as part of the working group, what we call things are important because the general public can get confused, and it's even more confusing that different manufacturers are calling things different things. So it's, they've created their own marketing around what that technology is called,
Right.
and so it does get really confusing, even with the assistive technology, right?
Right.
Your blind spot warning is likely called something different from one manufacturer to another, which makes it more challenging as public officials to do that,
Right.
that education piece. But I will say our existing authority is more for the testing aspect, which
Okay.
is why we're doing the permit process. We have authority to do that. That's how we're working with these manufacturers under existing authority. If there was a desire to do more widespread deployment, that's where the legislature
I guess what I
would need to
was,
step in.
you bring up a good point, and I know you may not be there yet, and you say, like, we are going to get to this issue. So companies that are testing, they may be providing services and not trying to sell to an individual a vehicle down the road. They want to just offer, these automated vehicles for delivery, whatever they're doing.
Right, so the
Trucking.
folks who are testing have their employees in the vehicle
Right,
doing the
right,
testing.
Right, okay. So if I'm getting ahead, just tell me
No,
I
it's
am. Are these companies, and are you in discussions with them about ultimately selling to the, general public? I'm not talking about Tesla and all this
Right.
stuff. I'm talking about a true automated vehicle in which the driver, I assume, will always require them to be present, right? I don't know why you want to send your car off for an errand, maybe you could, but the idea is that their long-term intent, or do you have a mix of intentions? Some people
I
want
think
to
they're a
provide
mix of
services, and other people
intentions.
might want to ultimately
That's
sell
right.
to the consumer.
That's right. So, for example, Mercedes has a self-driving functionality that they're only selling in states that have enabling legislation, right? So
Right.
that's an example of a manufacturer vehicle, if enabling legislation was passed here, that you could buy that you're not
That's a
buying
fully-
today,
as
right?
opposed to these, things that help you fully, they've got a product now that's fully automated, if you will, and
Yes, however, there still should be engagement by the individual,
no.
right? And there are various levels of automation.
Yeah,
I think
sure,
some of our next presenters are going to walk through that. But the reality is, with the technology that's out there today that any individual is using for personal use,
Right.
you should be directly engaged with that
And
vehicle. at
my
all
last one
times.
is, you mentioned, cited, you have lots of test sites, I think, or potential site. Are any of them in Harford County?
So actually, Aberdeen Proving Grounds has a great test facility up there. We
they
actually had
might.
one of our meetings there.
Yeah.
And frankly, the military is doing a lot of the early testing on this, because you think about terrain that they're in, over in the Middle East, different conditions, and they've been testing a lot of the automated technology because it's safer, frankly, right? So yes, we're very much in cooperation with them and having
That
them
would
part of the
benefit
process.
the public, too. I mean, it's not just a collaboration with
Right.
military, but it's also designed to, it's called tech transfer, whatever, ultimately, to help
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the
Harford
public.
County is an active member of our CAV working group. They come regularly to the meetings. And I just want to touch on the fact, so we talked about it with personal vehicles. There's also the model that'll be talked about a little bit more by Waymo, which is I want to ride someplace and I'm going to do, I'm going to hire a vehicle to be able
Okay.
to take me where I want to go, just like you can do today for hire
Yeah.
companies, right? But in this case, it's going to be an automated ride.
So that means
is
there's not a
the-
person in that vehicle?
Today, they have a person in the car, and I know they'll go into more detail about what their model looks like.
Right.
They are not allowed to do anything more than testing today under our
Right.
current legislative construct, but they'll certainly talk about what they do in other states.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question, maybe subparts to it later on, but first of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very illuminating. My question is, do you have the authority, do you believe you have the authority, that NVA has the authority to license all these various permutations of automated vehicles without coming back to the General Assembly to seek further legislation?
So no, if we want to move to the full deployment of the technology, there does need to be additional legislative authority. There was a bill that was considered by the committee last year, and so I think the chair and members of the committee felt like it would be helpful to have this conversation prior to hearing potential legislation for this year. But yes, if we consider full deployment, that does require additional authority.
Okay,
This,
so you think we're going to get legislation later on in this session?
I believe so, yes.
To give you further authorization to go further in this area? Okay, good, thanks.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Administrator, for your presentation. I'm trying to figure out what, if any, parallel the experience of the person that's a driver and then the vehicle that's autonomously driving. Like when I got my driver's license I got it at 17, not 16. But when I got it when I was 17, I had to take a class. I then had to show I was worthy to drive. And then I took a test, and then I could individually be licensed to drive. Is every vehicle, does it go through a process where it's checked out, it's individually inspected and vetted by the MVA, and then you get some sort of certificate that says this particular vehicle has been looked at specifically and it has been, found to be worthy to get the permit to be able to drive autonomously?
So great question. So there are two different processes. I'll first talk about what we've done with our permit process. So those vehicles, we have had Maryland State Police Safety Inspection Unit alongside with us as we were giving those inspections. We wouldn't give as we were giving those permits, we wouldn't give a permit to a vehicle that they hadn't seen, understood the technology, the engineering behind it, and signed off on. Every vehicle that you drive as a private citizen has been through a national process where there is tests done of vehicles, there's self-certification that manufacturers do, and that's a rigorous process up front when it's a new vehicle, and then there's the safety inspection, obviously, as that vehicle gets turned over from owner to owner. I will say that there is an evolution, and it reminds me of what happened with our test. So you go to take your test. Today, there are various technologies in the vehicle that do things. I remember when we first had a backup camera in a vehicle, I had examiners trying to put a piece of paper over the sensors so that somebody didn't get an unfair advantage. And we were all a little concerned that we might damage somebody's car with that, but we had to have the conversation of it's evolving, technology is evolving. So as a driver, now I have additional tools, and I shouldn't be prevented from using those tools, right? Just like the lane assist provides me additional information that I might not be aware of as a driver. I should be paying attention. You shouldn't rely too much on those functionality, but the technology in the vehicle continues to evolve, and so we continue to evolve what we do with the driver in order to meet that technology. But on the vehicle side, as I said, there are various processes in place that these go through. The technology, it depends on the deployment of the technology in terms of what that looks like, right? We're talking about private vehicles, also talking about low-speed shuttles. So there's various different approvals depending on which technology we're specifically. Does that help?
It does, but I don't think it answers it in full. I'm trying to figure out, is there for each individual vehicle, does it have a specific sort of criteria, a specific sort of testing or check that it goes through to meet the worthiness standard that you have to say this vehicle has passed the certification standard to be able to operate autonomously for whatever standard that we have that's authorized now? Is it an individualized
all of the permits
assessment?
that we've issued, yes. Each of those vehicles has gone through a rigorous process of documentation, providing information, hands-on inspection of the process. And then, as I said, it's generally stepped up. So we started and we have, only company individuals in there. And then maybe we bring some folks from state, local government in. It's not that we allow private individuals to be in that low-speed shuttle, for instance, until we've had weeks of operation without any safety issues. So it is a gradual process in terms of our current permitting process.
And is that the highly automated vehicle permit they
That's
get?
right.
How much does it cost to get that permit?
There's not a specific cost for that. Obviously, the vehicle has to be registered, so it would go through the normal titling and registration process, but there's not a specific
It
cost
sounds
for
like
that.
that is a significant investment of state resources when you talk about the inspections that have to happen, the number of, the amount of time that's invested into making sure people are in there safely, the gradual process of introducing it to make sure that the tech is trustworthy and all of those things. One of the things that we hear from our constituents the most, well, one of the things I hear from my constituents the most is the high cost of MVA fees, of titling, of when people get automated speed camera tickets, of, all the things. I hear from people a lot. And so when I think about introducing this new technology and introducing these new things, in my mind, I keep hearing one company's name in particular. So I think there must be some sort of not a lot of players in the market. So if we're dealing with one private company that stands to make a lot of money and not a lot of players in the market, in my mind, that means there's a great opportunity here for us as a state to make sure that if we are going to introduce this, that we have those, limited number of players in the market definitely paying their fair share. So I would want to make sure that you as the administrator are helping us understand the cost that it is to the administration, so that as we craft those fees and we sit down and say, what would a fair fee be for the fee for a highly automated vehicle permit? Because if we're asking the everyday person to pay a little bit more for their vehicle registration, we certainly would want a fee that's commensurate with what you're doing and what you're expending as an administration, to make sure that there's a value there for it. On the other side, I think that sometimes as legislators, we make policy decisions kind of one at a time, and then sometimes we pull up for the 30,000-foot view. You mentioned that a person in the future might want to call one of these companies so that they could get a ride to go someplace. And my colleague asked, well, would someone be in the car? And you said in the future, no, they wouldn't. So we have to also look at the labor market in the industry that would have been a person's job, a person's vocation. And so we will balance a new and emerging technology that's going to happen, but we also have to think about the labor market and the economy that we have to balance at the same time, particularly if this is not an area that is flush with a lot of small businesses that are going to benefit. But if I only ever hear one business's name repeated, what it says to me is this is still an industry that has very few players, and maybe one or a handful of businesses will benefit. So if I'm thinking about the economy and there are lots of jobs to be lost and very few businesses to benefit, that's a lopsided balance in terms of what happens to our numbers and the budgeting that we have to do here every session. So trying to figure that out. As the administrator, if we were trying to craft policy that we're looking out for the laborer that were going to lose their job, what sort of measures would we put in place? And this is just asking you to opine. If we were trying to craft policy that we're looking out for the laborer that was going to lose their job as this spread widely and quickly, what sort of things could we put in place that was giving that person that would no longer have a job more of a fair opportunity?
I think it's a great question. It is something we're very concerned about. As you saw, one of the focus areas for us is the impact in terms of labor and what that looks like going forward, not just the folks who may be in vehicles who one day won't need a person in there, but also on the back end in terms of the repair process, right? There's a whole network of individuals who are employed in that industry. And what does that look like going forward? Not just in the private sector, but frankly in our state space, right? We've got lots of state employees who work and many of them at the Department of Transportation work on that end of the vehicle. So it's definitely something that we're squarely focused on. I will point out that when vehicles have come to market, it has been a gradual thing, which is good because it gives us as policymakers the opportunity to be thoughtful in the approach. So generally, when we've seen the deployment, it starts off with a smaller number of vehicles and then grows into more vehicles. I will say that if vehicles are for hire, they're going to have to go through the same process that other for hire vehicles go through, and there's separate Ps in the Maryland Public Service Commission and processes that have to be completed there. Certainly, if the legislature is going to go down the full deployment end, there's no authority right now to your point, to charge a fee, but that is something certainly the legislature could consider as part of the approval process for these as you're considering the policy. I mean, I think labor having a seat at the table is incredibly important as we move forward, and I think that there's ways that we can definitely ensure that that happens and make sure that that voice is heard throughout the process, whether it's, gradual along the way. So yeah, happy to work with you and the committee to make sure that that voice is heard. I know it's important to us as a CAB working group, and we want to make sure that we do the right thing for people moving forward and keep them at the center of the policy.
I appreciate that. You also mentioned that right now it's in the testing phase, that there's a private company that's out testing and I guess collecting data on Maryland roads, the roads that we, try to keep in good working order. Do we have access ultimately to that data that they collect? Are they sharing that with you and bringing that back so that you could, if it were the decision of the working group, to democratize that information and share it with other companies or use it for the benefit of the state of Maryland? Is there a way that you could do that?
So part of the highly automated vehicle permit process is a sharing of data. So we have reports that are submitted to us. And I will say, even though we've issued the permits, none is currently active. So I don't want to misrepresent that. They've operated for periods of time. They're not currently active. But when those permits have been in operation, they've been submitting data to us so we could better understand what's happening, if they're having any safety issues, what they're learning while they're out there on our roadways, to your point. So that certainly is part of the automated vehicle permit process. I know our colleagues at the State Highway Administration are also using technology, and MDTA are using technology to better understand roadway condition, to understand markings on lanes and those kind of things. So there's a lot of technology being collected, not just by companies who are doing mapping and other things for the goal of CAV, but that is a whole new area of interest and focus because it has a safety benefit, obviously. If you can get there quicker and fill that pothole or fix that lane marking, that's potentially a crash that's not happening, right? So we are trying to figure out how we can use data in a variety of ways to make the system safer for everybody.
I appreciate that. And then the data that's being collected and the authorization for it, that whole permitted process, was there a fee for them to engage in that process with the state?
There was not. Our current authority is under our ability to do kind of pilot programs with manufacturers, and that section of statute doesn't have a permit fee or anything like that. So we had to create this program really as a novel program. There's not a model out there to do it under. And so, but at the same time, the company is putting up, in terms of insurance and other things. Obviously, any company that's on the front end of this technology is making huge investments in terms of the vehicle, the technology, and how they interact with the infrastructure. So there is an investment, and I don't want to downplay that either.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I want to make sure so this has actually engendered a lot of interest from the members. So we're going to make sure that those questions are spread out because some members of the industry may be more equipped to answer the questions. But so Senator asks a question, then everyone else is going to present, and then we'll do all the questions again at the end.
That makes sense.
Just to be a little bit more efficient. But go. Okay, yeah, cool. All right. Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Administrator Neiser. Who would like to come up next? We have, right now I have First Sergeant Brett Canfield is up next, but we can deviate if you like. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm Brett Canfield. I'm a First Sergeant with the Maryland State Police. I've been with the department for 24 years. A variety of experience in specialty operations and patrol functions. I'm currently the Assistant Commander of the Traffic Incident Management Section. I'm here to try and answer any questions the committee may have on potential law enforcement interactions with automated vehicles. So if you guys have any, I'd be happy to do the best I can.
Excellent. Well, Sergeant, I think we'll probably have questions at the end, but if you could take a seat at the table, that way when the presenters finish up, then, and Administrator Neiser, if you want to come up, if you're comfortable, then we'll be able to open it up for questions. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions about potential law enforcement interaction. But with that, then we can go on to, Mr. Perez, if you want to go next with Waymo, and then I know we'll have a lot of questions. Just a little preview for the sergeant. I'm going to ask about the intoxicated driving and the like with the autonomous vehicles, but we'll save it till then.
It's okay to start? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Wallstreicher, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's briefing on autonomous vehicles. I would also like to extend our gratitude to Senator Love and Delegate Ziegler for their leadership in advancing this discussion in this life-saving technology. My name is Anthony Perez, and I serve as the Northeast Policy Manager for Waymo, which is an autonomous driving technology company with a mission to be the world's most trusted driver. I came to Waymo just 4 months ago after serving 15 years in government. Most recently, I was the Bronx Borough Commissioner for the New York City Department of Transportation, where I worked to improve safety in the public realm for 1.4 million residents, drivers, pedestrians, and transit riders alike. I'm here today to tell you more about how harnessing the power of autonomous vehicle technology can be a vital step toward bringing safety, accessibility, and economic benefits to the old line state. As I mentioned, we're on a mission to be the world's most trusted driver, and that's why we're building this technology and expanding it across cities in the United States. Trust means a lot to me and means a lot to us as a company, and it's central into the way that we operate. We're here to work in partnership with leaders in government and earn your trust along the way. Sorry, it's freezing here. Apologies for that technical issue. Every 26 seconds, someone loses their lives on our roads. Our roads have a serious problem. That's over 1.19 million people worldwide every year, mostly due to human error. 94% of these are for someone who is either drunk driving, distracted, looking at their phone, looking at a TikTok video. They might be tired after having little sleep or distracted by looking at something along the way. And beyond safety, transportation remains inaccessible to many, including people with disabilities and seniors who can no longer drive. Safety is at the core of everything that we do here at Waymo. The data shows that we're already making roads safer. Over 125 million miles driven autonomously in the cities that we serve, the Waymo driver has proven to be safer than an average human driver across a range of metrics. We regularly publish insights into our safety performance and validation methods. You can go online at waymo.com/safety, where you can look at all of our data broken down by city, and you can actually download a CSV file with the raw data and analyze it yourself to see if what we're presenting is correct. And to empower communities, we want to have a deeper understanding of our safety record and serve as a guide for the rest of the industry as well. So if you see on the screen here, it shows that our vehicles are 90% safer when it comes to fewer serious injuries or worse crashes, 82% safer for fewer airbag deployment crashes, and 81% safer when it comes to fewer injury-causing crashes. That's 10 times safer than a human operator in these instances, 12 times safer when it means to incidents relating pedestrians. So let me tell you a bit about our history. Waymo actually started back in 2009 as the Google self-driving car project. Since then, we've now broken out into Waymo as a company, and our 15-year history has shaped our story by defining the moments that informed and validated our approach and a safety scale, which transforming it from a research project to now a beloved service across multiple cities. We're on a rapid commercial path, always driven by safety, and you'll see us come to more and more cities in the U.S., internationally as well in the near term. With each new location, the Waymo driver adapts more quickly, validating our approach and enabling us to bring safety and the magical experience of Waymo to more people in more places and safer. So right now we're operational in 6 cities. That includes San Francisco, Phoenix, Austin, Atlanta, and we just recently launched in Miami as of last week. We're also expanding our service into major cities that have different types of weather. So we're building this experience to operate in diverse weather experiences. We're advancing our system to handle even harsher conditions like heavy snow to ensure that we can provide a meaningful service to riders despite what's in the forecast. And that's particularly interesting, of course, for the Northeast, where obviously we just saw what happened this weekend and continue to experience day in, day out But as was mentioned already, our cars are currently being driven by a human safety operator. They're manually being driven by the person in Baltimore. So we're already seeing what it's like to drive in these roads, and our vehicles are equipped to manage these conditions. What you see on the screen here is a number of cities that I mentioned where we are currently operating, and it also shows the number of cities where we hope to bring our service soon. So in addition to those 6 cities, we'll also have a presence in 20 cities this year. That includes Dallas, Denver, and even London soon. Anyone can download the Waymo app and instantly hail a ride with our service areas. We're also making it easy to access Waymo through apps that you might already have on your phone, making it even easier for more people to access our service. So what does Waymo mean by fully autonomous driving? This was referenced a little earlier today in terms of the different levels. So this picture here will kind of at least lay out a foundation of what that looks like. Unlike driver-assist technologies that may require you to take control during your journey, Waymo is always the driver. So I know when I was in college, I had a 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and that car had cruise control. That's a form of assisted driving. Today, some of the newer vehicles have lane assist as well, but all of those require you to at some point have control over the vehicle. We operate at level 4, which means that it's true autonomy, where an empty vehicle can pick you up and transport you door to door while you relax in the back seat. Levels 1, 2, 3 still require some sort of human assistance, and so they're more driver assist, but not true autonomy. The simplest way to understand the difference is if you need a driver's license to operate it, then it's not autonomous. So this is a quick breakdown of the actual hardware on the vehicle itself. This is the 5th generation Waymo driver, which makes up our fleet today. It has 29 different cameras around the car, 6 radar sensors, and 5 LiDAR sensors as well. It uses a combination of those different sensors and cameras that work together to build a complete view of the surroundings around the car. That's day or night, rain or shine, up to 300 meters away. That's about 3 football fields of distance, 360 degrees around the vehicle. So this is an example of our vision system. You can actually see it's just like a camera. It looks just like a human eye. It has the ability to see great distances, and it can detect details like traffic light colors and read signs as well. That includes speed signs, so you can interpret the distance or the location of how fast you should be traveling at that particular location. Here in this slide, you're looking at LiDAR. LiDAR uses laser beams of light to detect distance and depth. And so with those laser beams being burst throughout, we can paint a 3D picture of the world around it. Here, you're seeing what radar looks like. Waymo's imaging radar creates large, dense temporal maps of the environment around the vehicle, which is instantly understanding the distance, the velocity, and the size of other objects around us. And here's how it all comes together in one unified view. You see the different colors from the previous slides. The LiDAR and the radar, which are up top, can see in the dark. And then what's capturing by our cameras at the bottom can only see when it's illuminated by headlights or by streetlights. So Waymo's autonomous driving technology is more powerful than the human eye, and it's more than the sum of its parts. Each sensor complements the other, providing the vehicles with a richer view of the world that makes our system more safer and more capable to drive in these conditions. So with its comprehensive sensor capability, our AI-enabled software serves as the brain behind the Waymo driver. The artificial intelligence was taking in all that information from the different cameras and the different sensors and processing what's actually happening around it. It's simultaneously processing the actions of everyone around it. It anticipates what might happen next, and it makes a safe, confident decision to navigate the complex environments as well. So you see on the left side of the screen, it's determining where should I go. That's like your GPS system. On the right side of the screen, it's what's around me. Where are the other cars? Where are the pedestrians? Where are the curbs and the crosswalks? At the bottom, you'll see what happens next. That's the AI is trying to determine that pedestrian is going to cross this way, and they're going to go at this speed. And then we'll also understand exactly how people are moving around, and that will help us determine what decision is the safest to get through this intersection onto the next and to get to our rider to where they need to get to. And I think we, oh, okay. I thought we froze again, but we're good. And so with this comprehensive scale sensor technology, our AI software can do all this work and put it together. But here's an example, which probably won't play right now, but what this video would have shown you is that in the top image, you see a person next to the vehicle. that person's on a scooter and they actually end up almost falling off the scooter and swerving in front of the car, and the car can detect when that's happening and it slows down and moves around them so that the person is not injured and avoided something that could have been much more catastrophic. Okay. And so these are examples of actual footage of situations just like that scooter example that I just showed you. That's just one example of the countless complex scenarios that our vehicles navigate every single day. Waymo drives autonomously millions of miles every single week, which is multiple human lifetimes of driving, meaning we regularly encounter what you would say is a 1 in a million chance event. Well, we see it a lot because we drive millions of miles. Each of these interactions helps Waymo driver understand even better how to get through these situations through continuous learning, which is improving road safety for those around us and also the ones that we share the road with. So you see these interesting examples. One of my favorites, of course, is a bounce house in the middle of the street. And every single city that we're in, you might encounter a very unique situation. But again, all these vehicles share that same brain. So that one time that we encounter that situation, every other car in every other city also understands how to navigate that next time it happens. And we've developed the industry's most advanced weather capabilities through systematic scientific approach. Our methodology involves 4 key steps. The first one here on the left is to define the weather-related driving challenges. We start by thoroughly understanding the problem space, analyzing the different weather types, and how each one is uniquely affecting the road conditions. As you know, sometimes snow comes in heavy, thick spurts, and sometimes it's just a bit of sleet, and sometimes it's just raining with a little bit of hail. Those are all different conditions that require different behaviors to respond accordingly. So the first step is to define what exactly is happening. The second step is designing. We build our purpose-built solutions for autonomous driving. So we also have sensor cleaners that maintain the clear vision, and we optimize driving behavior with different weather conditions. So we have hardware and software that can help us adapt to different weather conditions. And then we also rigorously validate our testing. You can see here in the third column here, that's one of our vehicles being put through a simulated storm with really strong wind gusts and significant snow as well. And we also test in places like Buffalo, New York, and Northern California, so we can make sure that our vehicles can confidently get through the worst of snowstorms. And lastly, we scale fully autonomously operations. So once we've proven our technology meets our strict safety standards, we can roll out our service with clear guidelines and when our vehicles will and won't drive in different weather conditions. So if it's more than 3 or 4 inches or whatever may be in a particular city, we'll understand, hey, we'll make a decision to say we should pull over and put this away if it's not safe at the moment. Of course, we follow all guidelines as it relates to government when there are states of emergency related to weather. And with Waymo, the fully autonomous ride is just a few taps away for those that aren't as familiar with how the technology actually works. You can download the app right on your phone, you enter your destination into it, and you'll be on your way. With Waymo, the driver handles all the actual driving of the vehicle, but the riders control the aspects of the experience. So you can change the temperature, you can choose your music, you can adjust the destination of where you're going, and it's all at your fingertips right at your phone. You can even adjust how far you want the front seat to be and make it a really comfortable, unique experience for you. So personally, now that I've been in several Waymos, it's already connected to my Spotify. So as soon as I get in, it already starts playing hip hop. It's ready for me to go. And accessibility is core to our mission as well. So traditional transportation creates daily barriers for people with disabilities, but our autonomous vehicles offer a transformative solution that's inclusive, which is regardless of age and ability. By partnering Waymo with our accessibility network and mobility advocates, we built our service from app to the ride with the understanding that transportation needs vary widely and often interconnect. Our accessibility features ultimately enhance everyone's experience, and while we've made significant progress, our journey toward full accessibility continues. So every time we're in a new city and every time there's a new ride, we're listening to feedback and we're adapting our software to make sure that we're serving our riders to the best of our capacity. And also, Waymo's a fully autonomous fleet is also all electric. So all our vehicles have zero emissions, promoting sustainable transportation ecosystem that includes ride-hailing, biking, walking, and public transit. By improving road safety, we can create more walkable, bikeable neighborhoods, and it's all powered by clean energy from local utilities and community programs. And it's all supplemented by a premium renewable energy certificate, which means that we're driving for a greener future for all. Waymo also provides autonomous rides to and from transportation hubs, which is solving the challenging first and last mile issue when it comes to preventing people from using transit. By connecting riders to subways and buses and ferries and trains, we're helping create a more accessible transit ecosystem with the flexibility to cover everything in between. And Waymo is also a great way to experience a new city, whether you call it home or if you're just visiting. We're already providing seamless airport connections at Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, and we recently just received permission to serve riders at San Jose and San Francisco International Airports as well. And for me personally, I think that was one of the most interesting experiences when you get to Phoenix and you land and you get out your gate, you can actually see signs in print on metal saying, to get to your Waymo, come down this hallway. We're fully integrated into the system, and you can ride all around. And of course, we hear that not only are folks getting into the Waymo, but once they do, they're going to restaurants, they're going to shows, they're spending money on the town. So it's a great economic development aspect as well, because it brings that cool factor that folks love to see. And we're also helping riders experience large events that are important to drivers, and they also drive revenue for the cities that we operate in, from the Super Bowl to NBA All-Star Weekend, and countless concerts, plays, and games in between. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Mr. Perez, thank you very much. That was great.
Chair Smith, members of the committee, my name is Ariel Wolf. I'm General Counsel to the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association, partner Venable LLP based in DC, and a proud Marylander, having grown up in Baltimore. I live in Montgomery County, but my wife is from Baltimore. My parents, my in-laws, my siblings, their kids, and and everyone else care a lot about the state and this issue. Let me talk just at a high level about who the members of AVIA are. It's important to get the context of this industry and who's come together to support it. You'll see it's a combination of OEMs, car manufacturers, developers of AV technology. The car manufacturers include Ford, GM, Honda, Volvo. On the commercial vehicle side as well, with International, Navistar, and Volvo trucks. AV developers, of course, like Waymo. Note, Earl Adams is here, the Honorable Earl Adams is here for representing Plus, which is an autonomous truck company. It's a member of AVIA, we're proud to have it. And then there are beneficiaries of the AV ecosystem as well, including Uber, Lyft, Amazon, FedEx, and other players in this that are emerging, such as Terawatt, that are building out fleet deployment centers and the kinds of infrastructure that's needed to support this technology. So it's a growing ecosystem, and it's contributing a lot to a lot of different places that we'll get into in just a bit. So Mr. Perez talked a little bit about this. I want to just underscore one aspect of what we're talking about, certainly from the AVIA perspective, in terms of our membership. What does it mean to be the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association? Who do we represent? And I think some of the questions that senators have asked, it's important to underline this. We're talking about, in the SAE, Society of Automotive Engineering, levels of automation, levels 4 and 5. What that means, as was noted in the Waymo presentation, is that there is no expectation for there to be a licensed human driver in the vehicle, that the vehicle is performing all aspects of the dynamic driving task. That's what levels 4 and 5 mean. Everything else, at some point, in some way, requires a human to be attentive at the wheel. So we're talking about autonomous vehicles, and as you see, there's a number of different use cases here for level 4 and 5 automation, and that's not just the ride-hailing context and robotaxis, as was described in great detail, but also in long-haul trucking, in middle-mile delivery. A company called Gatik is doing that. And there are a number of other companies that are involved in all of these different kinds of use cases. ultimately what this is about is bringing the benefits of autonomous vehicles to the public, and that comes in the form of safety, also as was noted, because humans have a track record of being poor drivers and causing collisions, fatalities. I'm sure there'll be other discussion of that as well, and there has been. But also beyond that, which is incredibly important, mobility and accessibility, and in the commercial vehicle context and logistics and supply chain. Very important to address issues of supply chain constraints and inflation and so forth. Just a quick snapshot here, looking at a national picture, because we've been talking a lot about individual companies. This data is actually almost a year old. We put out a State of AV report every year in May, so I expect these numbers to be significantly greater. But as of last May, in 2025, AVs had driven more than 145 million miles on U.S. public roads. And that number, again, is significantly more. That number last May had already been a 2x increase from the year before. So the number of miles that AVs are undertaking on public roads at this point, I think it's fair to say, is increasing exponentially as companies continue to deploy on roads. You know, it's noted it's the equivalent, at least last year, of the average distance between Earth and Mars. And it means that this is not an industry of the future. The industry is here now. Autonomous vehicles are on public roads, carrying passengers, they're hauling freight, and they're performing an important service to the country. So just a quick snapshot here of where some of the deployments are occurring. This is in the material, so I don't need to go through all of it. But again, you see, this is not even current because there are a number of announcements that have been made. There is a concentration for autonomous trucking, for example, in Texas. California, of course, had been the birthplace, in a sense, of AV technology, so there's a lot there. And in the Southeast is growing, but Mid-Atlantic and Northeast has been identified as an important area to expand this technology, to bring the benefits, the safety benefits and the mobility benefits to the public. So that's something that's very important as this committee and the legislature and the Assembly contemplate legislation. Let me just give a quick overview of AV regulation in the United States because of the context of legislation, what we see on the horizon. So as members of the committee may know, motor vehicle regulation is bifurcated in the United States. Federal government plays an important role and the states play an important role. And there's nothing that the industry is doing or looking to advocate that is looking to disturb any of that. The federal government regulates the safety and design of motor vehicles, and that would include autonomous vehicles. The design, construction, and performance of motor vehicles is regulated by the federal government. That's why you can get in your car and drive west, get on I-70, and go all the way to the other side of the country. If every state had the ability to issue design regulations, that wouldn't be possible. So the design of motor vehicles, that's at the federal level. And there are two different ways to do that, I'll just note, through a series of regulations called Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, right? Thou shalt have a steering wheel, and so forth. But there's also, it doesn't need to be enumerated. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the Department of Transportation issues those FMVSS, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, but also has the authority to identify defects, manufacturing defects in motor vehicles, and then the manufacturers issue a recall. We're familiar with that process. That's if something presents an unreasonable risk to safety in a motor vehicle outside of a regulation that you should have a steering wheel or so forth. So there's a backstop to any kind of technology the federal government regulates, and in fact has proceeded to start looking at some of these issues in autonomous vehicles. They look at how is it performed, how has it been constructed in certain cases, and has done so over the past few years. The states, of course, regulate AV operations, rules of the road, licensing, registration, insurance, and so forth. That function can and should and needs to continue to occur. One note here on AV operations occurring in a variety of environments. The key distinction, and I think it's very important, between level 4 and level 5. We say level 5 automation, that's the holy grail. An autonomous vehicle can go anywhere and everywhere and can be in all conditions. Level 4 autonomy is what we're seeing now. It's fully autonomous. No human is expected or really is performing any of the driving tasks, but the operating parameters of the autonomous vehicle are constrained somehow. So for example, it might be a geofence. It can go here but not there in a particular area of the city, or it can cannot operate in a particular weather pattern or condition, so forth. It's called the Operational Design Domain, ODD. It's a term you may encounter as you go forward. So that's level 4 autonomy, and that's what we're seeing in the initial deployment. One note about data is that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in 2021 issued what they call a standing general order, which requires crash reporting with no de minimis threshold, frankly, for autonomous vehicles. A tremendous amount of data being submitted to NHTSA, to the federal government. That is then released publicly and is available. So there's a lot of data coming into NHTSA, which is the regulator at the federal level for autonomous vehicles. And so as we have conversations on federal legislation in Washington, we support a robust national crash reporting database for autonomous vehicles, and we've been on the record for that as an industry. So just very quickly, the picture here. What does it look like across the United States for autonomous vehicle legislation and deployment? AVIA had prepared and put forward model legislation about 10 years ago, and that's evolved over the years, but in some form or fashion that's been enacted in 26 states, have a construct where autonomous vehicles can be deployed, but they must be deployed safely, subject to a number of conditions that are specified in statute, and includes being able to perform and operate and consistent with rules of the road, be self-certified, consistent with federal law, be able to achieve what's called a minimum risk condition. Something goes wrong, the vehicle has to be able to pull over to the side of the road or do whatever is appropriate in that context that's the safest to stop the ride. And a number of years ago, we also included in our legislation a requirement that any company that's putting an autonomous vehicle on the road has to have a law enforcement interaction protocol or a first responder interaction protocol and plan that specifies how the vehicle operates in conjunction with in scenarios that would involve first responders. I just note, this being the last slide here, just looking at the country here, you can sort of get a sense of where deployment is occurring and being rolled out. Maryland is now one of the, I think, a small subset of states that does not have legislation on the books, whether for testing or operation, and we certainly are eager to continue to work to have the safe and swift deployment of autonomous vehicles to bring those benefits to Maryland roads. And I would note, actually, just before we started here, was able to talk to, I think it was noted that SteerTech is a company based in Maryland. Talked to the CEO, Anuja Sonalkar, who gave me permission to say she's based here in Maryland with the wonderful company SteerTech, that she supports having deployment legislation in the state of Maryland. So with that, I'll conclude the presentation and be open for questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. All right, we'll go to Senator Sidnor for questions.
Thank you. Actually, if Mr. Wolf, you might be the best person for some of the questions I have. You mentioned a couple of things that I was interested in. One, in technology. I'm curious, with the intellectual property that I guess it takes to run these things, is that our company's intellectual property shared with the government in some form or fashion, so that if something were to go wrong with your systems, they have access to that IP?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think maybe it's two aspects. One is principally the development of autonomous vehicles has been in the private sector, so the intellectual property rests with the companies themselves, although there actually is an interesting origin story from the 2005 Defense Advanced Research Project, DARPA project, that led to the kickoff of autonomous vehicles. A very interesting story. But generally speaking, it's a private sector innovation and IP. But maybe to the question about whether the government has access to it, back to NHTSA, US DOT, does have a process, as they do for all auto manufacturers, for any kind of technology. Because we can't forget, autonomous vehicles, an automated driving system is an iteration, as has been noted. Driver assist systems, advanced driving assist systems, those systems are examined by NHTSA all the time. And so the information they obtain through their process of defect investigations may provide information. It's not quite IP, but allows the government to oversee the safety of it.
Okay. In terms of insurance, I get one of your clients' vehicles. I get in, there's a car accident, I'm harmed. Who's the, and let's say another party's harmed, who is sued? I mean, does it go, is the company that I got into the car with, how does insurance work, I guess, is the question in these cases?
Yes, Senator, great question. We support having, of course, all autonomous vehicles and companies and deployers and operators need to be insured consistent with state law, any other applicable law that be present there. In the event of collisions, it would proceed as you would imagine. There's remote support assistance for autonomous vehicles. If it's required to have first responders come or law enforcement, it would proceed exactly as you think. And then the apportionment of presumably a small property damage claim could get resolved the way it would now. If there are other aspects of it, then it would proceed the way you would imagine apportioning fault beyond that. Because I would underscore one point there, autonomous vehicles are by design, and I think by rigorous testing, they're going to obey the speed limit, going to drive very safely. And we know that humans are not doing that today. And so there needs to be an examination of who's at fault in those situations.
So is my vehicle, we hit someone, am I being sued? Or is the vehicle, the autonomous vehicle's company being sued? What's happening today in some other states? How does that work?
Well, the collisions, to the extent there are any,
I think that my colleague just said that there was one that was reported in the Washington Post, which he'll probably ask about, that was just reported today.
Yeah, I think at a basic level and a principal level, the facts determine what happens. So,
right, but who's the party is what I'm trying to figure out.
The deployer, I mean, if the autonomous vehicle company is deploying, manufactures, deploys the automated driving system, and is the operator on the streets, which is one of the principal models, then that's the company that's taking responsibility.
Gotcha.
There may be models where that's bifurcated or trifurcated, in which case the operator frontline may be the one to do it. Okay. That's the only reason why I hesitate.
Gotcha. And in today's federal world, data has been really important. We've had the federal government trying to get their hands on all sorts of data for their own purposes. You mentioned crash reporting data and the like. If I'm getting into an autonomous vehicle and I have a phone that I'm then communicating to use the service, what's happening with that data? Is it being then sold to third-party brokers that then maybe sharing things with parties that are interested in that kind of data?
Yeah, Senator, good question. I can't speak to the individual practices of each company. What I would say is motor vehicles, autonomous vehicles are subject to the same data, privacy, cybersecurity laws for any other kind of product. And so
your industry doesn't necessarily have a standard?
At this time, we follow the law, state law and federal law on privacy. We certainly expect there to be a conversation around that with respect to data that involves geolocation, other kinds of things. And we welcome that. We certainly want to have that conversation as it moves forward.
In these other states where programs are working, has there ever been any incidents where someone may have used your service and been also wanted by law enforcement?
That is a good question. I would have to get back to you on that, Senator. Okay. I don't know the answer to that.
That's the question. What would happen if somebody who's wanted gets in the car, goes and yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
They would have to have an account of some kind. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my colleague to my right just commented on this Washington Post article, which was posted at 2:15 this afternoon, quite appropriately timed, that talks about how a Waymo vehicle had stopped and hit a small child who'd run out between two parked cars, at a school, outside of a school. Once I read the article, Waymo takes the position, which sounded reasonable, that its vehicle almost stopped and was only going 6 miles an hour when it hit the school kid, and that other drivers, real drivers in real cars, probably would not have stopped as quickly. So that makes some sense. But in the article, there's a paragraph that says the following. The crash happened the same day that a separate agency, the National Transportation Safety Board, said it was opening an investigation into Waymo's behavior around stopped school buses in Austin. School district officials said in November that they had documented 19 cases of Waymo's illegally and dangerously passing buses. Are you able to comment on that?
Sure. So first I'll comment on the first incident that you described in the Washington Post this morning. Right. And so the incident happened last Friday in Santa Monica, where a child comes out from behind the tall SUV vehicle as the Waymo is going down the street. The Waymo is traveling at 17 miles per hour. And as soon as it saw the child coming out from behind the vehicle, it immediately braked really hard and was able to reduce its speed from 17 miles per hour to 6 miles per hour. Our peer-reviewed model shows that a fully attentive human in the same situation would have likely have reduced only to 14 miles per hour. So we believe that because our vehicle was able to spot the child as quickly as possible using all of our cameras, we were able to respond much better and quickly than a human operator would. And we immediately pulled over and we called 911 to make sure that the child was fine, who popped up right up and walked right off the street. The child was not directly injured in that way. And then we also voluntarily provided the information to NHTSA. So when they opened that investigation, it was because we voluntarily told them about it.
It sounds like a great explanation, but what about this report of the National Transportation Safety Board?
Sure. So similar. So there's a separate investigation where there were in Austin several incidents where the Waymo vehicle had approached a school bus, had either slowed down and stopped, but then proceeded. It's important to note that in all those incidents, no one was injured or impacted directly with the vehicle. However, we have issued a recall and updated our software so that it can better recognize when those school buses have that arm pulled out to stop the vehicle. We're in constant communication with the Austin school system to continuously improve that as well. And we think that we welcome the investigation because we'll fully comply and be transparent. I think we can all learn from that as well. But again, these vehicles are interacting with school buses thousands of times in a day across the city. So those are such a small percentage of these incidents where that has occurred. And every time we've addressed it and are in further communication to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Great. Thank you for your answers. Now, you had the, excuse me.
Could I add something?
Yeah, sure, but you need to come to the podium.
I think one of the important policy principles that for the committee could consider is that in many of the states that have authorized legislation, their motor vehicle administration or whatever agency that's responsible for the enforcement of this has authority to take action if there are safety issues involved. There are obviously processes and timeframes under which that occurs, but I do think as the committee is considering legislation, that will be an important piece of it, that the motor vehicle administration retains the ability to have those kind of safety dialogues with whatever company might be operating here in Maryland. So I just wanted to offer that there should be some regulatory structure. There is in other states. We believe we can effectively enforce that here.
Terrific. Thank you very much for your answer. Now, Mr. Perez, I'm sorry. Let me go on. Number one, I want to thank you for courteously coming to see me, and we had a very interactive conversation about this a couple of weeks ago. And you'll recall at that time, my concern was someone hacking into the system and taking over the car and, say, instructing the car to speed up immediately to 90 miles an hour, in which case there's going to be a disaster, especially on a city street. And you assured me that there was no way, the way the system is designed, there's no way for a hacker to get into the system. You said even you couldn't get into the system. Even Waymo couldn't get into its own cars in order to. So, but a few minutes ago, when you were asked about the bounce house, you said because of the experience with that bounce house, every other car will now know how to deal with this issue, which suggested to me that somehow Waymo was going to communicate information to other cars about that they would pick up about how to deal with bounce houses. So how do you square that with your statement to me that there was even Waymo can't get into other cars? and control what they're doing?
Sure. So I think there's always, the question usually comes in the form of, can you remote control the vehicle? But I think the distinction is that we can do remote assist. So when the vehicle encounters a situation where it's questioning what it's seeing and what it's interpreting, it'll talk directly to our human operator who will engage with the vehicle. And it's like a yes or no kind of question. It's saying, is there a tree in the way? Is there something in the way? Yes or no? And the vehicle can determine whether it's safe to proceed, or if it goes, as Mr. Wolf mentioned, if it goes to the minimal safety risk assessment, which is to pull over and stop. So that assist is where the human comes in to say yes or no, or proceed or don't proceed. But that doesn't mean that someone actually gets in there and controls it like a remote control.
Okay, but if Waymo is able to remotely access its cars out there deployed around the countryside and tell them and update their programming inside the car, how can you assure us that some hacker can't similarly get into the programming and update the programming so that after the car's been in operation for 10 minutes, the car will automatically accelerate to 90 miles an hour?
So it's the software is what's being updated, and the software is embedded into the system in stages. So every time there's a new software update, that'll be embedded into it. And if you go back to like the slides that I had shown, it's taking that what it's seeing in the picture between the cameras, the LiDAR, and the radar. Then that's when the artificial intelligence comes in, is to interpret what it's seeing, understanding that there's a vehicle coming from the right at X speed. The AI is what then determines where that vehicle will go next, or how long it'll take to get to where that vehicle is. And so that software is upgraded in a systematic way, but it's not being done in that moment, like in real time.
So I'm comparing what I'm hearing to the complaints about the old voting machines we had, where there was all electronic, and you simply pushed buttons, and then at the end of the day, and you got no record of what you'd done. There was no hard copy. At the end of the day, you had to just rely on the fact that the software inside the voting machine was accurately counting the votes. So my concern here is that if you all have the ability to remotely access all the Waymo cars around the country and upgrade the software in order to import information about bounce houses, that some hacker also could somehow devise a way to remotely access all the cars and upgrade the software to instruct them that after 10 minutes of operation, they would accelerate to 90 miles an hour. So I'm not sure you answered my question, or at least I didn't comprehend your answer.
Sure. I think my colleague, Mr. Wolf.
Industry-wide?
Why don't you go up top?
Senator, very briefly, the only thing I would say in response to which is a very important question on cybersecurity is that all vehicles today, I mean, it goes back more than 10 years ago. I think it was the Jeep brake system was shown to be activated or not. There's a cybersecurity concern that's legitimate for all motor vehicles that are now, they're saying the term is software-defined vehicles. And all the vehicles we have, all of us here are using. That's not a good answer. The point I would only say is that in the autonomous vehicle context, unlike vehicles that are being upgraded and adapted in the general fleet, 17 million vehicles, autonomous vehicles are being designed from the ground up. By design from the beginning, with cybersecurity fully in mind. And not to say that other vehicles are not, but to the extent that there's any cybersecurity issue, it's likely the case that autonomous vehicles are that much more secure. Nothing is 100% foolproof. But I would just say that that's a concern that we as an industry embrace, to have a cybersecurity conversation that the federal government is having in states as well, to be a part of that. But it's baked into everything that comes from sort of a blank sheet of paper to build an entire autonomous vehicle. But it is a concern across the entire vehicle fleet.
Let me just pursue this with one more follow-up question. So I feel pretty confident that with I know there's software in my car, but I feel pretty confident that nobody can access that software remotely and change it around. If I can take the car to the dealership, and then at the dealership, I'm relying on the fact that the dealer is responsibly going to update my software as required. But I'm pretty confident that sitting in my house, that as the car is outside in the driveway, that nobody independently can get into that software and change things around. I think what you're saying is that you're building all kinds of cybersecurity protections, but nonetheless, that Waymo is able to invade the software of these cars deployed around the country and change the software And I guess my concern is hackers are really, really sophisticated these days. They seem to devise ways of getting around all the safeguards. How are we going to be assured that some hacker is not going to get into the software of the car and program it to do stuff that's going to be dangerous?
Yeah, I would venture to say that every auto manufacturer has a capability to push some kind of update to vehicles today through telematics or other kinds of portals. And
even without my taking my car into the dealership, they can just do it independent. It will
100%. And so,
wow, I
but
never
the
knew
point,
that.
but Senator, it's an important point that needs to be addressed through like Auto ISAC, which is Information Sharing Analysis Center at the federal government. There's multiple ways at a national level, even international level, that there are information sharing, risk analysis, and everything goes into that. And I think that's the key point. That in an autonomous fleet, it's being done from the very absolute beginning to bake it into the whole thing. So, but it's an important issue.
All right, well, thank you for those answers.
Thank you. This question is for any of you, and I'm asking for a friend. Does this mean then that a driver who is intoxicated, no matter what happens, that driver is immune from any kind of legal action if they're pulled over, if something should happen? What does that mean?
Looking for your own personal Uber.
Just asking for a friend, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, do you want to answer first?
So you're proposing the question, somebody gets into an automated vehicle impaired right now?
It's their vehicle, they get in it, and
The way the law is written right now, my understanding is it's still the operator, the way our current legislation is written. We don't have anything in the books to say that if an impaired rider gets in that.
so that means he can't do that because he would be
With what we have right now.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, the vehicles on the road right now are at that level 2 stage. We don't have any legislation for level 4 or 5 currently in the books, so that hasn't presented itself.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that in some states, and what we hope to see in Maryland as well in legislation, that's exactly what's being changed in the law, that the law now states the driver or the operator is responsible. So we want to change that it actually acknowledges the automated driving system, the ADS, as the driver. So then that ADS is who in that sense, is then liable. But in the absence of that, it still is the operator of the vehicle today, which is the licensed person sitting in the car.
They'll change that eventually so that the automated car is responsible for everything. Is that correct?
Exactly. So
Then one
at
can
least,
be intoxicated, get in the car, and that's fine, go to sleep and worry about nothing.
so let me only speak to Waymo, but in Waymo, there's nobody sitting in the driver's seat. So the person who's sitting in the back seat, they would not be liable for an issue with the vehicle's operation as a passenger.
I mean, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
You can spend yourself.
Personally owned autonomous vehicles, and so like when we get there, you know, if someone's intoxicated, I guess the question's more maybe applicable to like what's happening. If the person's intoxicated and they have a personally owned autonomous vehicle, who's then liable if something happens, or can you do it? Has the law evolved? We're gonna have to change the law at that time. What's the decision tree?
And our model legislation that, as I noted, has been enacted in 26 states in some form or fashion, includes a provision, as Mr. Perez noted, that would by law say that the ADS, the automated driving system, is the driver for the purpose of assessing compliance with traffic and motor vehicle laws. And we've pushed that because it's important to have that clarity. So that way but that's for when level 4 or level 5 automation is engaged. And that is important. And so when that's the case, if you're in the back of a Waymo vehicle or another autonomous vehicle that's carrying a human, there's no expectation that the human performs any aspect of the driving task, needs to be attentive or anything like that. So there's no reason for there to be any liability for a person, whatever state they're in.
That'll raise interesting questions of insurance and things like that and attributable liability because like you own it, but you're not the driver. It's a very interesting question.
And I will say we've already engaged Maryland Insurance Administration. I mean, even what those policies look like moving forward. So it is a conversation they're having within the insurance industry in terms of liability, personal responsibility, all those pieces. And so it is a conversation that we've already started in Maryland. And certainly there are nods to what's happening elsewhere. But as you talk about your private ownership model is a little bit different from what we're seeing out there today, right, in terms of what's being deployed. You're seeing that shuttle solution. You're seeing that for hire vehicle in most cases. And so it's a little bit different of a situation.
We're going there, though.
We
We'll
are.
get there. All right, Senator James, then Senator Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Early, I think when the state person was testifying, and I asked her a couple of questions, she mentioned Aberdeen Proving Ground and the military, and then others have mentioned DARPA. So just a little bit about, my understanding of DARPA is that certainly it is, the creme de la creme, if you will, designed to make sure the warfighters in the United States have the best technology and the most advanced, whatever it is they need, no surprises, and so forth. They create these challenges as one way to bring in, a lot of talent that's not currently government employees to work with them. Sometimes they have a specific mission, sometimes it's broader. In any event, my understanding was, remember when Al Gore said he invented the internet, we kind of know that was not quite right, but the idea is that since DARPA is government funded, a lot of their effort, when it can be transferred out to, is supposed to be helping everyone. So I guess one question I have is that, based on what I understand, Waymo, if you go back up the chain, started at Stanford, then it went over to, where did it go to? It went, I guess, from Stanford, then Google swept in and bought them, and then they moved over to a different name, and then, now they're called Waymo, but they're still a subsidiary of Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. So a question I have, giving that kind of context and also thinking about patents and the like, and my concern about companies coming to us early and then setting the stage to close out competitors in some way because they were here first and got to sort of to create the rules of the road. What is your understanding briefly about how that technology that DARPA, assisted with, that morphed into Stanford and the history of Waymo, and how is that publicly available, and what is private and can only be profitable to Google?
I mentioned DARPA.
And you can follow up with this. So I'm not looking for the deepest answer here, just a very general lay answer.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thank you. I'm actually not totally prepared to fully answer that question.
I didn't expect.
But as I think you mentioned a good layout. I'll just summarize for the folks here. So we did start as a Google self-driving car company in 2009 under Google. We are still under the same parent company of Alphabet. There are several patents that have been filed and continue to be filed as we develop the technology that are either our individual engineers or obviously associated with Waymo as a company and Alphabet as a parent company. I'm not sure what the division is between what is fully owned by DARPA versus Waymo versus Alphabet.
Yeah, and I would just be curious about that, just generally, because certainly I'm sure I understand, I did some corporate work, I'm a lawyer. I understand that there's certain amount of what was done collaboratively that really can't be privatized. But certainly you incentivize people, smart people and companies to come in, so they do have an opportunity to commercialize on some of the collaboration. So subsequent advances that Waymo and its predecessors could have created, I can understand that they consider that private in the context of their lawsuit against Uber, right? It's a pretty good example of that, and I assume that was a lawsuit over subsequent and not anything that was developed collaboratively with the federal government, right?
Yes, Senator, I mentioned DARPA earlier, so I'll just very, very quickly note the really great story there. In 2004, DARPA had a grand challenge to have an autonomous system go across, I think it was the Mojave Desert. No one could complete it that year. In 2005, it could get completed because, if I get the history right, a company called Velodyne, an American named
Yeah, I read all
David Hall invented the rotational LiDAR, which is, you see, but that was invented for the purpose of finishing it. Everyone used that, and that's what really kicked off the American autonomous vehicle, in some respects, the autonomous vehicle race.
Right.
One quick note on that. And while the DARPA Grand Challenge did lead to America being the leader in rotational LiDAR, we have been eclipsed by Chinese companies that have developed rotational LiDAR. And it speaks, I mention that only because of the importance to get a national framework and to get states to enact deployment legislation. We have to win in this technology. We have to succeed. It's already being exported in the Middle East and in Europe and in Latin America. And so we have a great set of companies here and innovation here with trucking and light duty and everything in between. And so it underscores the importance of moving quickly.
Super. Thank you. So you all can get back to me. I just want to, in general, understand how much of the effort that Waymo did is available to all companies because of, the stage it was in, and then where it goes from where today a lot of your advances are yours and yours alone, and let the competition, let's battle it out with the competition. But you don't have to answer that today because it's it's not relevant right now for what we're looking at. But I did want to understand it in terms of companies coming in here in the future, and we're asking for permission to be part of our autonomous driving world that you all are helping to create. So that's, you want to briefly say something, that's fine. I don't want to make the committee
No, I just wanted to thank you for the
long.
question and commit to getting back to you with more information.
Okay. I think that, let me see that might be all that I just kind of wanted to ask you right now. Yeah, I think that's a lot to ask you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll kind of just ask. I have a few questions. I know that one is going to be for the administrator, but so I'm just kind of curious. Somebody made mention, just my background is in like crash reconstruction. I did it for a number of years, was trained by NHTSA out in Oklahoma about some of these subject matter specifics as it was evolving, albeit a couple of years ago now, and this has rapidly evolved, really, especially in the last like 5 years. So my question is, when I'm reading through some of your literature here, it looks like, you got driver assist, and then you have autonomous. And when I look through, I see specific things noting like GMC's Super Cruise or GM Super Cruise, and then Tesla's autopilot. But I don't see Tesla's full self-driving indicated in anywhere in here. And there is a distinct difference between the autopilot feature and the full self-driving feature. Is that,
Senator, thanks. Let me start. Tesla's not a member of AVIA, so I'm not speaking, and I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I can.
Well, it was in the literature here, so that's why I'm asking.
No, 100%. So what I could say is, with respect to any technology, regardless of what it's called, if it requires or expects a human to be attentive at the wheel, we do not, as an industry, consider it autonomous.
Okay.
So again, however it's labeled, it's
Yeah, no, I understand. I appreciate it. So you're somewhat familiar with the FSD, though, right?
Yeah.
Can someone put an address in, hit go, and will the car drive them there?
I can't speak to the capability. Actually, I don't have one. I don't mean to be. I can't speak to it.
You're not familiar with your competition's scientific advancements?
They're not a member of the association, but what I can say is, without specifics to a particular company.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I get it. So my wife has a Tesla, and I kind of geek out on some of this stuff, right? Because I'm a car guy. So I look at like what you guys are talking about, and I understand that the parts of it where there's multiple cameras, they're scanning the road constantly. It's actually, it is fundamentally a safer opportunity for transport than a human error factor, taking that out of the equation, except for the impaired human factors that might be, behind the wheel. But Maryland only has, you made comments that Maryland has only a level 2 approval, correct?
Maybe
I
that
thought
was,
somebody said the driver assist level 2 was program
Under state
level
law.
2 in Maryland, approved.
I'll speak to the process we have. So we have a process to test vehicles, and that was that highly automated vehicle permit process that we use. There's no grant authority for a vehicle to operate without an operator under current law. Still requires that driver engagement.
But somebody
under
kept
current
referencing
law.
like Maryland's approval at level 2, but there's level 3, 4, and 5 in this handout,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
in this stuff like that. Is that not right?
I think what the officer was referring to is that the current vehicles out there, the majority of them have level 2 technology, and that it requires that direct intervention with the vehicle.
Is that all that's approved in the state of Maryland, though? Is there anything
So
above
it's not,
that?
I think approved in the state of Maryland is maybe not the way we look at it, right? So cars are approved at the federal level, as you know, by NHTSA, as was referenced earlier, and those safety standards and the crash tests are done. Absent from that, and we follow those federal motor vehicle safety standards. So absent that, and they require human intervention.
So the reason I ask is because, thank you for your answer. The reason I ask is because certain non-autonomous vehicles that are autonomous, they drive on their own, you put an address in, and they go there. Is that approved in Maryland for usage, to be used for a full self-driving? Because, I mean, that stuff has to be approved through different bodies to approve that. So I'm asking specifically because the one thing I know about is my wife has a Tesla. So I know that if you can, depending on what level package you get, you can put an address in, hit go, and the car will take off and drive you there.
There is no process in Maryland for a manufacturer to come to us and say we, have this technology widespread deployment in Maryland.
So it's okay to
federal
use.
level, right?
So it's okay to use in
exactly.
any state.
So it's okay to use, but the human being behind the wheel is still responsible
for
because the way
fundamental-
our
for taking over the
statute
car.
is drafted.
Sure, understood.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I do have one more question.
Sure.
Is Maryland working with, is there other programs like, I think it's Steer and Forterra?
Yeah, so
that right?
Steer was one of the companies that we authorized.
Those
a
are
permit
Maryland
for.
businesses?
Steer is a
Are they a
Maryland-based
part of
company.
this?
Yes.
This group that you guys are talking about, are we working with them as far as utilizing and showcasing Maryland businesses in this field?
Yes.
To help advance them?
Yes, so Steer has been a very active participant in the Connected and Automated Vehicle Working Group. They actually helped us develop the process of that permit that we built. We've had meetings at their facility. We've done things, have young people who are excited about this technology come and do various contests with them. So yes, very much we want to showcase them.
I just thank you for that answer. And the last question I have is someone, and I'm going to apologize, I don't remember exactly who it was, but made reference that during the fully autonomous vehicle operation, that if it senses something that is, it wants to basically second check what it's seeing, so it contacts the human operator. I may have missed that, and I'm going to apologize because I did come in a little bit late, and I'm sorry. I've been reminded about that from my good friend. Where is that human operator at?
Sure. So our company is headquartered in California, but as we are scaling in different cities, we are expanding. So our operators are spread across the country and globally as well.
Well, so that's my concern. Is so I hear a lot through my interactions with people in this circle, this web, or whatever you want to call it, that we've got operators that are actually in other countries that are then monitoring the literally watching, for lack of a better analogy, I'm just going to say, literally watching a computer screen or watching a vehicle drive, waiting for it to such a time like you described where, hey, I don't know what to do here. This is what I'm seeing, so I'm just going to clamp down and not know what to do until you tell me what to do. And then that person takes over literally the vehicle and operates it to either a safe location or gives it authority to pass on. Is that kind of somewhat a fair assessment?
So we have operation centers where remote assist human operators are working. They're not actually actively monitoring the camera of the vehicle.
Okay.
But
When it alerts them.
when the vehicle is confused or doesn't know what's happening in front of it, wants to confirm something, it will trigger a remote assist procedure.
And that remote assist could be someone in another country, like.
Well, yes, well, particularly because we were also testing in other countries like London and Tokyo.
I understand, but could a car that's being operated in the United States be monitored by someone in another country.
Potentially. For a 24/7 operation across multiple cities, we need to use all of our resources to be able to respond in an adequate time. So we have operators across that are.
So at that time, that's where I kind of get concerned, because then we're leaving the autonomous vehicle with the role and responsibility to basically interpret what it sees or doesn't see with a alert notification to someone that may be on another country. And I mean, traffic laws, other things are different in other places in the world. So how are we being consistent in how that's applied?
Yeah, I want to go back to one of my previous comments earlier where when we talk about remote assist, it's different than remote control. And it's really more of a binary yes or no. It's can you proceed or should you pull over? And so what the vehicle is essentially asking is it safe to proceed? And if the answer is no for whatever reason, it's going to pull over and stop. It's not going to speed up or do something different.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just, if that's the role, I personally would rather see that responsibility and role be handled here in our country that understands what the whole, just would rather be here.
I totally understand.
How's that?
Just to give you an example, like a lot of, like, this is like when you saw the bounce house, or if a tree falls in the street, what the car is asking, is there really a tree in front of me, or is it some sort of illusion? And that's pretty much yes or no, and a human can make that distinction.
But I guess, okay, so in closing then, if it sees that, and it sees this down there, and if the human says no, we are potentially entering in to an idea that it still could have contributory negligence on the human remote operator within your company, I guess. Is that fair?
It would more than likely result to its minimal safety risk, which is to pull over. That's what usually happens. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be a hypothetical. We've been operating in some cities for 5 years, 127 million miles where this has not happened.
And out of 127 million miles, did you, and again, if you've already put, but how many crashes have you been involved in?
I don't have the exact number with me, but the number of crashes also doesn't speak to the liability. You know, anecdotally, what happens a lot is our cars will drive the speed limit and we'll stop at a stop sign, but sometimes we'll be rear-ended by another vehicle.
No, and I understand that, but your crashes do have direct correlation to, at times, to liability, though. Like, I would think that would be a number you'd want to have and be able to argue from, because they're, I mean, by your assessment, by what you just said, that they get rear-ended, then you would be implying that there is no liability, or there's been no crashes where Waymo or other partners have been involved in a crash at fault, and that's not factually the case.
Correct. What you may have been seeing was on my slide where I talked about the percentage compared to human safety operators. So we're 90% safer than it would be a human safety operator when it comes to an incident, but not 100%, to your point.
I'm not gonna say that. I mean, I know all about people. Perception reaction time, they don't respond correctly. Yes. I get it. So thank you.
Correct. It's not 100.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a lot, so I appreciate the indulgence, but can we just start where that ended? Can you just tell us specifically what countries are the remote operators are in who have access to American vehicles for remote piloting when the vehicle requests it?
Thank you, Senator. I don't have that information with me right now, but I'd love to follow up with you.
But it's possible that these are countries who with very different traffic laws than the United States, people who drive on the opposite side of the road, or you gave the example of Tokyo. They drive on the same side of the road, but on the opposite side of the car, which is crazy. But it's possible these are being remote piloted for brief periods by remote operators in other countries who have very dissimilar traffic laws from us. Is that fair to say?
I also want to know, we're not remote piloting, it's remote assist. So the human is helping the vehicle answer the question, yes or no, but it's not actually taking control of the steering wheel, its acceleration or its speed or its direction.
Got it. Okay. It's telling it what to do, it's just not doing it.
It's confirming which decision is the safest to take.
Okay, gotcha. All right. If you could get us that list, please, that would be very, very helpful. Let me just take a step back and kind of talk about the good here, and then we'll get to some of the more challenges. There are only a few times in my life where I remember using technology and feeling like it was magic. I remember the first time I used an iPhone, and it was like, whoa, this is completely, and I remember the first time I tried ChatGPT, and you could tell within seconds that this was a whole new thing that the universe had never experienced. And it wasn't incremental. And I remember driving in a Waymo. Well, first I remember seeing a Waymo for the first time in Austin, navigate a left turn, which is perhaps the most complicated thing someone could do. And then riding in one myself later, it felt like magic. And and to the extent that there were competition issues, I understand why you are the market leader compared to other products. That makes sense to me after having ridden it. And so I have some enthusiasm here, but what gives me pause is what happened in San Francisco maybe a month or two ago. Widespread power outage, your vehicles saturate San Francisco, appear to not know what to do in those circumstances, and cause some dramatic impacts in that city. So I want to hear what happened there, and then I want to talk about how that translates to other experiences in other cities.
Sure. Thank you for that question, Senator. So what you're referring to is the PG&E blackout that happened in San Francisco in December, and that created gridlock generally across the board for all users of the road. In particular, the issue that happened in this case was its scale. Our vehicles are already designed to understand how to traverse an intersection when the traffic signal is not operating appropriately. So what it does is if it reaches an intersection where there's a traffic light that's not working, it'll treat it as an always stop intersection. We're supposed to stop on all sides from every direction and take turns to move forward. Most of our vehicles that were in San Francisco made it to where they were going to their destination without any issues. A small number of those vehicles did stop and had that issue where they were crossing multiple intersections. And again, this is a third of the city lost power. It was a major scale of an issue. And so multiple vehicles were requesting remote assistance saying, is this true that now we've passed 5 or 6 intersections and they're all not operating appropriately? That's when the car says, let me check in with a human to make sure that what I'm seeing is true. And so what happened in that case was that our system was overwhelmed with too many requests from too many cars all saying, are all these intersections really not operating as they should be? And so that was the issue. And because of that, the car stopped and did not proceed as the safest safest thing to do in that situation.
But they stopped in the middle of the intersection. They weren't stopped on the side of the road. They were overwhelmed. If you could hit me, Senator, but they stopped in the middle of the intersection, not on the side of the road. What it sounds like is the cars are designed to deal with an individualized circumstance, but when that individualized circumstance is affecting the entire service region, the cars did not know what to do, and the humans were unable to direct the vehicles, and the vehicles stopped in the middle of the intersections in a major U.S. city.
So, oh, sorry.
Well, so, I mean, so that's my concern with how we move forward here, right? If everything works for each individual circumstance, but there is some type of disaster, those disasters are themselves predictable, right? So one of my memories as a kid that still sticks out to me to this day was watching the World Series, and then there was an earthquake in San Francisco. It was the Giants versus the A's, and, you know, all of 85 collapsed, the whole city, you know, and then the broadcast went out. San Francisco is your highest area of saturation. A disaster like that has occurred within our lifetime. It is predictable that it will occur again. You're operating now in Miami. A hurricane of immense force is predictable there. When you operate in New York City, there was the largest terrorist attack of our lifetime that also occurred in DC, which is a prime target for a nuclear attack or a terrorist attack. So the question isn't like, how do these, for me, not about how the cars act in individual circumstances, but in these moments that are predictable of disaster, how can we trust that the vehicles will operate in a way that will allow people to exit? In other words, I don't care about the person in the Waymo. They'll get out and figure out a way. But I care about the Waymos preventing people from getting out of Miami when there is a major approaching hurricane, or getting out of DC if there's a dirty bomb that goes off. Can you address those kind of macro issues?
Sure. So the first thing I want to do is go back to my point about scale. I think this was a huge major city where a third of it lost power. The next time, and hopefully it's not anytime soon, a major city loses power to that level, we'll already have some experience in navigating this and understand where things went wrong the first time. And then since then, we've actually already shipped improvements into the software to alleviate that issue, and we'll also continue as we scale in more cities. We'll also hire up and have more ability to address some of those larger issues. But we also coordinate very closely with city and state officials during, before, and after the incident as well. So as soon as we were talking to the mayor of San Francisco and we understood the extent to which our vehicles were stalled, we made the decision to end all rides and bring those cars back to the depot. I think that is actually part of our strength, our ability to have a dynamic fleet where we can issue a command to bring all the cars off the road if there's an incident like a significant snowstorm or an earthquake or a blackout. Our vehicles will be programmed and will know to get off the road and save as way possible. And again, we're communicating in real time with emergency service responders and city officials.
There's not an earthquake protocol that you have pre-programmed. There's not a flooded, like in Howard County, which, you know, I know you're not familiar with, but had a 100-year storm. It flooded the entire area. And then I think it was like, I don't know, 9 months later, it had a second 100-year storm.
Yep.
Is there a flood protocol? Is there a evacuation protocol already programmed into the vehicle?
Yes, and actually that's part of a lot of the legislation across different states to have a first responder plan. So we understand, and that's already how we engage with law enforcement and emergency service vehicles. We also have a dedicated team for that work. We've already trained 15,000 first responders and law enforcement officials across the country. And we do trainings where we engage with them before we launch in any city. And yes, that the learnings from those conversations and across different cities is integrated into our software.
Could you get back to me with 2 data points, Mr. Perez? The 6 cities in which you are operational, could you let me know how many employees you have in each of those cities? And let me know what the revenue is that you're contributing to those cities. And when you give me the revenue, could you break it down in terms of what specifically is tax revenue that's going back to the coffers of those cities? And then if there are general things like advertising that you're contributing to local businesses and things like that, certainly that's beneficial to know. But I specifically would like to understand what sort of revenue is going back to those cities where you are fully operational there.
So first, yes, I will get you the specifics to those 2 questions. But I will also add that I think it's a concern that we hear as it relates to the impacts on the workforce. And I think as Administrator Nizer mentioned, I think what we're seeing is that this is likely something that will happen gradually over time. And as it relates to our ability to scale up and hire more people in the cities where we're operating, those numbers will be more reflective of a larger industry rather than how many people we had hired in the first or second year when we first entered a city. For example, Miami, we just launched last week. So if I get you the numbers from Miami, that might not be truly reflective of what it would be like if we had a fully launched operation in a particular city. I will get you those numbers in any case. And I'd also like to note to an earlier question of yours, all of our vehicles are registered, titled, and insured, and we pay all applicable fees just like every other driver on the road as well. And the last thing I'll also mention is that there are also some indirect contributions that our vehicles are making as well. The city of San Francisco noted a $40 million revenue in 1 year just based on the ability of Waymo to bring people to the city, to go out to restaurants, to go out to shows, to events like I mentioned, the Super Bowl in Phoenix, the NBA All-Star Game. Those are all ways that we can contribute as well. And in addition to that, it's not just about the future of how these jobs may be transitioned in the future, but we also need jobs. So when people see a vehicle, they may think it's a one-to-one, one car, one job for that driver. But when it comes to our cars, we actually own and operate them as well. So there are manufacturers that are employed to help adapt the base models and put our cameras and sensors on top of them. There are also mechanics and fleet operators that are charging the vehicles, that are rotating the tires, that are cleaning them, that are fixing them when they need help. And there are also dispatchers, as we mentioned, that are also hired. So there are many jobs that are coming online now because AVs are a real thing. And so there are new jobs that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago because a company like Waymo comes to a city. And then I'll also note one more thing, which is that In the cities where we operate, where there are traditional ride-hail options, official reports have shown that in San Francisco, the number of drivers in traditional ride-sharing apps actually grew 7%, and their earnings actually increased 14%. So what that means is that when Waymo comes into a city, we help increase the pie, and so we add it to the ride-share system, and those people are then taking less personal cars off the road because it's another option for them to get around.
I was trying to be brief, but you see what you did there? So, so to your point, Mr. Wolf, in his testimony, what he said was that the goal is to swiftly to be able to adopt this legislation and to be able to plus up on this technology and to do this. In his testimony, he said that included in the association is not just your business, but also Amazon and FedEx. And when he mentioned Amazon and FedEx, I thought about the great work of this committee and some of the things that we've done on public safety. And essential to that in public safety is making sure that people have jobs to go to, making sure that there are entry-level jobs for people to go to. And I've thought about some of the folks that I know who have worked very hard to turn their life around and some of the opportunities that exist sitting behind the wheel of a vehicle and driving for some of the companies that were mentioned and some of the companies that want to work with autonomous vehicle technology. And I thought about if we were not able to put people behind those wheels, but if the opportunities existed in a broader scale for autonomous technology to drive those vehicles, what that might do to the impact of some of the work that we've done to give people opportunities to turn their lives around. So I hear everything that you just said about what's happening in other cities, but they are not Maryland. And I don't know what they've done to have the sort of commitments that we've had to give people the opportunities that we've done here in Maryland. But we have an economy that's built on the labor of Marylanders, and we certainly have commitments that we've made to people that is built on an economy that starts with entry-level jobs and that graduates beyond that. And being a driver is one of the essential components of an entry-level job that gives you further opportunities in the future. So I hear what you said, but your company doesn't exist in the vacuum, and the technology that you are getting a great opportunity to pilot on the roadways of the state of Maryland while you're collecting data does have a broader implication. So I would look forward to getting from you the information on the number of employees and then the revenue that's being contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, excellent. Now we're going to wrap it up soon because we have some other work ahead of us. But I've got two quick questions. One, when Mr. Perez, you were talking about how you hop in. I mean, I assume you have to have an app, you know, to access this, and then you hop in, and then also your Spotify or whatever it is, the app pops up. You got your hip hop rolling on. It's got your profile, all this stuff. I wonder what do you do with like all the telematic information? So what are the safety protocols? Is that shared or is that sold? What do you do with that information, with telematics?
So we use it just for safety needs.
And privacy stuff too, you know, if you're recording and all that stuff.
So the cameras around the car are trying to detect the traffic and the transportation around the road users. We used, when someone first gets in the car speaker will tell that first rider how the cameras are operating. The microphone is not being utilized while someone is in the vehicle, so we're not recording conversations. What we do use it in is, for example, if someone is smoking in the vehicle, we'll be able to detect that with the camera and say, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that in this vehicle. And actually last month, there was a woman who had a baby in the back of our car. And through her tapping into the car and talking to the cameras and using the microphone, we were able to detect what was happening and get her to where she needed to get to. So we use it in instances as needed for emergencies, but it's not being recorded or utilized for another purpose, including for advertising purposes.
So those data, do you keep that, or what is it?
It's anonymized data that's used for reporting purposes.
Got it. And the final thing was just so you were describing when, like, it sounds like you're using agentic AI, like it's making decisions and evaluating things autonomously. And so I think about it in even the law enforcement context or the military context, where agentic AI there are a lot of guardrails there because you're making decisions. You don't want to deprive an actual, officer or someone who's going to be deploying deadly force of that decision, of that ultimate decision, because public safety is involved. Or same thing with law enforcement. But when you're talking about a pedestrian walking around the street and the Gente is making a decision as to where to go based on, that's a public safety thing as well. And I was wondering, are there guardrails there, or how do you all think about that, or how did you internally? I'm just very curious because I've seen it in the military context and those discussions on the ethics and morals and kind of the legality of that. And I just wonder how that applies to this very real public safety context in like a pedestrian safety or other way.
Sure.
Okay.
So that predictive technology that's being used by artificial intelligence is more about thinking about situations that could happen. So we can see which way the pedestrian is facing. If they're already walking, we see how many miles per hour, at what pace they are, and in what direction. So we can determine their trajectory. So we can determine if we are driving straight when that light turns green, will that pedestrian, based on the information that we have, is it likely that they'll get in front of the car? And then we can make a decision as to whether to slow down or to stop. So that's the way that we process it, but it's really just inputs. The inputs are the cameras and the sensors as to what's around, and the AI comes in to try to understand what could happen next. And it's just based on that instant decision of whether to proceed or to stop.
That's just fascinating. I mean, so what is the internal process? I mean, do you have like lawyer, you know, you have your general counsel looking at this? Like, how do you all decide how to deploy that and how far you're going to push it? I mean, I'm just fascinated. It's just,
Yeah, no, I mean, it happens in real time. I mentioned you couldn't see the video because it froze here on the screen. But what it's looking at is that like that person on the scooter, and it sees that they're swerving, and if it looks like they're about to get in front of you, the car just trying to determine, should I slow down, should I stop, or should I proceed as I'm going? And that's really what it's focused on. It's really just safety focused on determining what's next. But I don't think that we're necessarily predicting where that person's going to go next as a pedestrian in terms of whether they're going to a store, to a school. It's very limited as to what's happening in that moment at that intersection on that street.
no, yeah, I guess I'll rephrase my question, but we'll take it offline and we'll go from there. But I really appreciate you all taking the time. If there are no further questions, I'll just take a moment to thank you all and your teams for being here. I know you spent a lot of time putting into this and being here with us today. So really appreciate you and look forward to liaising with you all as we consider legislation that's coming forward and leveraging your expertise. So thank you very much. Thanks. All right. We are now going to gavel out and reset. And we control our own destiny here. Some quick things going on. So let's get through these bill hearings, and the weekend is ahead of you. So we'll gavel out.